Is it just me, or does it feel like toddlers and young kids always have tantrums at the worst possible time? Maybe you're in the middle of the grocery store with a full cart and they're just freaking out, making a big scene. Or maybe it's not even the location, but just mentally you're exhausted and maybe you just finished work or just finished something and you're really tired and they're losing it. You don't have the patience, you don't have the energy. It's just not good timing for everyone. I've been there very recently and it's happened many times. And so I want to learn. I want to figure out more about tantrums and why they happen, what causes them, and then what can we be doing as parents to help mid tantrum as well as afterwards to kind of prepare them for the next time that might happen, to either prevent it or give them some tools to kind of get through them, as well as tools for ourselves. How can we as the parent help get through the tantrum better? So I did some research with ChatGPT, used AI to dig into some resources and figure out what causes tantrums and why are they so bad, and then what can we be doing to help manage this. That's what we're going to dig into today. So when your kid has a tantrum, there's nothing wrong with them. There's nothing that's unusual about that. Every kid has tantrums. And the difference is that for us, when we as adults feel hungry or upset or frustrated, not all of us, but most of us have kind of figured out some ways to kind of cope with that and kind of calm down and control those emotions. For kids, they haven't had that experience yet. And it's more of a challenge for them because their kind of intuition is to freak out and get overwhelmed because they just don't know how to express themselves. And there are lots of things that can go into it. For some kids, it might just be, some kind of emotional or mental overstimulation. Maybe they're just tired, maybe they're hungry, and that is causing whatever situation happened that might feel like something super minor. It's causing that to get just worse and worse and worse. At least that's what I've found in our household. A lot of times the tantrums are just these like super minor things. And it's like, why is this, causing such a big deal? It's not necessarily that is what is causing the big deal. It's just other factors that have kind of played into it, mainly being that they're just kids and they just don't have the ability to cope with that on their own and kind of think through it and understand what's going on in that moment. So what can we be doing mid tantrum? Everything's going crazy. The kid is losing their mind. And what are we supposed to do when that starts happening? First, pray. You probably don't have a long time, but a quick prayer to God to say, hey, God, help me get through this. Give me the strength, give me the wisdom, give me the words to say and the patience to help this child through this. The next thing is just staying calm. Kids take cues from us, and this can be so hard because you're getting frustrated. And like I said, it always tends to happen at the worst time for us as well. Like we're in a bad spot or we're just overtired and it's just a lot going on. And so it's hard for us to stay calm and patient, but the more that we can do that, the better. Speak slowly, use kind words, use clear words, and just try to stay calm through it. Because if we start to escalate, it just makes it worse for them. And that's what they start to learn is, all right, when I'm frustrated, it's good to continue to, lash out and be frustrated because that's what mom or dad is doing. The other thing that's important is just safety. Sometimes these tantrums can get pretty overwhelming and kids are kicking and pushing or throwing stuff or just doing stuff that just is kind of out of the ordinary because they're in this moment of just, kind of chaos. So safety is obviously important. And so sometimes that does mean, especially if it's a little bit of a bigger kid that has more strength and can move around a little more, it means just kind of being able to grab them and move them to a safer place, clear out whatever is kind of around them. And so using that as a way to just ensure that whatever happens in this moment here, we're keeping everybody safe. The other thing that I do a lot that is kind of a no-no in this mid-tantrum moment is trying to reason with them. With kids, sometimes it's just tough to reason with them in general, but if they're in this moment of just overwhelm and throwing a tantrum, trying to, be logical with, why did you do this? Or why would you think that? Or this isn't a big deal. Doing all that, it's not going to help. And so trying to avoid doing that in that moment. And, that's something we can discuss later. But again, just being, calm and trying to, more so just like kind of distract them and help get them through this and breathe and do all that kind of stuff rather than just trying to reason with, hey, they took your toy, that's not a big deal. It shouldn't be a big deal. It's not really, you guys can share, they're not going to comprehend that and think through, oh yeah, that makes sense, mom. I should just, calm down and stop, freaking out. No, it's not going to happen. So just, not trying to be too logical in those moments. The other thing is trying to kind of hold some boundaries. Obviously, like, if it's getting physical and they're hitting, you don't just allow that to happen. You have to tell them, hey, I understand that you're mad. It's okay to be mad, but you do not hit. Or, it's okay that you're frustrated. I get that you're frustrated. I understand that. Or I know that it's okay to be crying right now, but we don't hit. We don't, call, bad names or whatever might be happening. That's just wrong. It's okay to do that. We're not necessarily here to, again, be logical and explain we don't hit because of this and this and, not talking through it, but just saying, kind of letting them know that you're there for them. I'm here. Let's calm down, and I'm, ready to talk whenever you're ready to talk, or do you need a hug, or, things like that aren't necessarily, problem solving, but just trying to help them get through this kind of emotional roller coaster that they're on. So we got through the tantrum. Now what do we do? Post tantrum, we can start talking and kind of reflecting with them on what happened. What made you angry? Why were you upset? And just, when they're in a more reasonable state and have, again, they've calmed down and are more receptive and can share more instead of, crying and screaming and yelling, try to reflect on what happened. Don't just forget about it. If we just let it happen and then we're not coming back to it, then we're not really, teaching them or solving anything or figuring out like what really happened there, and just putting it aside, and that's not necessarily helping. So bringing it up and having a conversation about it. Like I said before, validating their feelings, that's super important as well. Again, it's okay to be mad. It's okay to be frustrated. It's okay to be upset. We as adults are do that too. So, hey, dad gets upset about things and I get frustrated too. It's okay to feel that way. What we can't do is just act in the certain ways that they acted, and, talk about those kinds of things with them. And then give them some tools to kind of figure out how can I get through that when I'm in that moment. And this is going to take some work, some practice, because again, they're not super logical. They're not always just thinking of these things in the moment, because they're just so overwhelmed and kind of overheated with this, anger or whatever is going on. But talking about, hey, when you get really frustrated, take a deep breath, count to 10. For them too, pray to God. Say, God, I feel overwhelmed. Help me right now. Give them some kind of simple prayer that they can use when they're in that moment and kind of recognize. Again, it might not happen right away, but they'll start to kind of tie it together. Give them some things that can help them to alleviate the anger, the bad energy that's going on during that future tantrum. Now, for you, mom and dad, this isn't going to be easy. It sounds easy for me to stand here with some notes that I've taken after doing some research, and I'm here in front of a mic. The kids aren't around, and I can talk about how to handle a tantrum. When you're in the moment, it's a lot harder. And every kid is going to be different too. There are going to be some kids that handle their tantrums, naturally they do a much better job, or they don't have them as much. Some kids are going to have them more. Some are going to get, more violent. Some are going to be just, more so using, maybe they use, language that's inappropriate, or they're just, being loud. And there's going to be different ways. So every kid's going to be different, and it's going to be tough. But I think doing a lot of these steps that we talked about, between setting yourself up with prayer, and then being able to, console them and set the boundaries, and, teach them some of these steps of taking deep breaths and counting and all those things. If we're trying to do some of those things, it's going to help. It's going to get better. And so don't feel like, hey, man, I tried those things and, we're working on it, but I got mad and I started yelling. We're going to mess up. It's okay. God has grace for us, and we need to have that for our kids as well, and for ourselves in these moments. It is okay. Keep working on it, and it'll get better. As tough as it can be, look at these tantrums as learning moments. We talk about, having to go through hard times to grow, to get better. Tantrums are hard. That's a hard time for you and for your kid. And so look at this as an opportunity. God, help me grow in this. Help me learn. Help me get better. And again, we're not aiming for perfection every single time. A lot of it is, not in your control. It's, it's ultimately in God's hands, but it's up to your kid to internally kind of figure some of these things out. And so again, we're not aiming for perfection. We're trying to do the things that we can control in the moment and afterwards to get better. And when you mess up, again, when you yell, or when maybe, I forgot that, I tried to be too logical with them, or, hey, I forgot to validate their feelings, or, I forgot to pray. I forgot to do these things. Again, it's okay. The next day it'll be better. All right. And the next time it'll be better. And just keep working on it. And that's all we can really do. Hope this was helpful for you. Feel free to leave a comment. If you have a way that you've handled tantrums before that I didn't mention, I didn't bring up, I would love to learn, would love to hear about them, things that you've gone through that, hey, this really worked for us. Again, not everything's going to work for every kid, every family, everyone's different. But if you have ideas, things that have worked well for you and your family, I would love to hear them because I would love to get better at this for me and handling it with my kids. Thanks for watching.